Hamish de Bretton-Gordon is a retired British Army colonel and former commander of NATO's and UK's chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear reaction troops. Welcome to our program, Colonel Hamish.
Thank you very much for having me.
I would like to start with the latest news from The Economist. According to The Economist's predictions, the war in Ukraine will end this year in 2025. Meanwhile, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin said that he would be ready for a compromise over Ukraine. Do you believe that the war in Ukraine could be stopped this year by Donald Trump and his team? Can Trump really force Putin to agree with a ceasefire?
Well, I think we all very much hope that that is the case. And it's very interesting hearing some of the comments coming out of the Kremlin from Putin and some of those close to him. It is clear that the Russian economy is in free fall, is suffering very, very badly. It is clear that the Russian population are now getting really fed up with this war, seeing so many of their young men being killed on the front lines. And it's clear that Putin has suffered, a couple of major setbacks in the last 4 weeks. His forces have been defeated in Syria, where he invested so much time and effort. He's lost his one warm water port, which was Tartus in the Mediterranean. And he has had to withdraw his troops, or what he could, from Syria. So that was a very major blow. We then saw that the Ukrainian Secret Service eliminated his right-hand general, Kirkov, which was a severe blow to him as well. And when Putin starts talking about compromises, one then realizes that actually these things are beginning to affect him and the Kremlin themselves directly. This is not sort of language we've heard from the Kremlin or Putin for the last, coming up to 3 years. So I think, with President Trump due in the White House in a few weeks' time, and as you say, the Economist predicting this won't go on for another year, I think Putin cannot go on for another year. Whatever he says, the Russian economy, Russian people just cannot maintain it. And with President Trump coming in, again, the language coming out of Washington and coming out of, the future President Trump is very interesting. It is very different to what we heard sort of when Trump was elected back in November last year. I think Putin and the Russians sort of thought that Trump would side with them, but that appears absolutely not to be the case. And I think Trump is giving Putin an ultimatum. Basically, you have a ceasefire on President Trump and President Zelensky's grounds, or America will go all in with Ukraine and basically defeat the Russian army. So, I absolutely hope this war will end as soon as possible. And this year, 2025, all the signals are against Putin. And he seems, by what he's saying in public at the moment, to realize that that's the case. And I think Putin is now looking for a way out, where perhaps he can still continue as president of Russia. One finds that very difficult to understand with the damage that he's done to Russia, its economy, its army, and its people. But that conciliatory talk. So I think, we are all positive. But of course, the ceasefire and the peace deal must be on terms that the Ukraine people can agree with. That is the key.
Do you feel that Vladimir Putin has no choice but to try to go out, try to find this way out of the war against Ukraine by agreeing with Trump's proposal on Ukraine? Do you feel that if Vladimir Putin declines Trump's proposal on Ukraine, then he can lose his grip on power?
I think things are moving in that direction, certainly. it is very clear that Putin now realizes he's in a predicament. He's in a difficult position, and he seems to be now looking more at his own personal survival than perhaps what is happening in Ukraine to his army. And he knows that if he is defeated in Ukraine, then that's the end of him. We know what happens in Russia with failed dictators. They very quickly get taken out and removed. And I think Putin is now really looking to see how he can survive himself. And, one is getting the feeling that he realizes that, the cards are all in President Trump's hands. President Trump could lead to the complete demise of Putin or could give him a way out. But Putin knows that his only way out is some sort of orderly withdrawal from Ukraine, rather than complete defeat. If the Russian army is completely defeated in Ukraine, Putin is finished. And that is in the gift of President Trump, I expect. So, I think Trump does hold the key here. And, for President Trump, not that I know him personally, I only sort of read about him and listen to him. He seems to be the sort of person who revels on success and tries to avoid failure as at all possible. If he can create a ceasefire in Ukraine early this year at the very beginning of his premiership, I'm sure we'll hear him shouting about it all around the world. For him, that will be his greatest success. So, at the moment, the tide, everything is moving in Ukraine's direction, I think, and against Russia. And let's hope that Trump is as good as his word when he becomes president at the end of this month.
It seems also that Vladimir Putin has faced numerous setbacks during the latest months. High casualties rate in Ukraine, as a failure to achieve strategic objectives in the war against Ukraine, the withdrawal from Syria, and also they even have managed to shoot down Azerbaijani Airlines, a civilian plane. Moreover, Russian General Kirillov has been eliminated. What is your assessment of the every setback Russia has faced during the year of 2024?
Well, I think you've captured it very well there, what has happened in the last few months. Setback after setback, and failure becomes a habit. And Putin seems to be failing, virtually everywhere we turn. As you say, even last week, the Russians seem to have shot down a civilian airliner, killing, a lot of people. That in itself would be horrific, and, would certainly in the Western world would cause, the president or prime minister of that country to have to resign. But when you put it on the back of everything else that's going on, the huge casualty rate, the fact that Russia can only fill up its army these days with North Korean mercenaries, that no doubt is costing Putin an awful lot. So it's an expression that we use, death by 1,000 cuts. And Putin might not have 1,000 cuts, but he's got several hundred. And these are really hurting him and really hurting Russia. And the momentum is so important in warfare and in these sort of geostrategic politics. The momentum is really turning against him, which is why I think we're hearing his conciliatory tones, suggesting that there is a way out rather than just continue to fight. But he also realizes that way out is to allow his own survival is going to be the Russian army out of Ukraine. I can't see, anything less than that. So, things are going badly for Russia. Once things start going badly, it's very difficult to turn them around. And at the moment, one can't see a prospect of that. And maybe Putin is wishing for President Trump to come into power as quickly as possible so that he can stop the war and potentially save his own skin.
Also, let's cover another Russia's setback, the Kursk Oblast, the Kursk region. Russia and Ukraine has successfully destroyed Russia's 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, according to Forbes. Moreover, today, Ukraine, right now, several minutes before our conversation or several hours before our meeting today, Ukraine has successfully struck the command post of this brigade in the Kursk region. We have seen new footage from the armed forces of Ukraine. How can you assess current situation in the Kursk region and unsustainable losses of Russian army? Because according to Forbes, the Russian brigade, 810th Brigade, has been redeployed out of the battle because of the high rate of casualties there.
I think it's a really important and significant development. We discussed before Christmas that Kursk would really hold the key to what happens in future. You know, Kursk is such an important piece of Russia to Russian people. You know, it's where the Great Battle of Kursk was fought in the summer of 1943, which eventually started the demise of the Nazis. But, you know, tens, hundreds of thousands of Russians were killed there. Now, to lose that territory last year to the, amazingly effective Ukraine military incursion was a devastating blow. And I think, you know, part of the reason that Putin is now backtracking and looking for a way out is that he was gambling on retaking Kursk. He said it. He said he'd retake Kursk by Christmas. And it's clear he obviously hasn't done that. And as we've seen in the last few days, you know, his main brigade there has been absolutely decimated by Ukrainian forces. And, I can quite see if the brigade has been redeployed, it's going to leave a vacuum, and, you know, potentially Ukraine military could take more of Kursk. So his failure to retake it is yet another, I think, severe cut to Putin's position and power. And if he can't retake Kursk by the time President Trump comes into power, again, he is going to be severely on the back foot. And, I think we're all delighted that the armed forces of Ukraine have realized quite how important Kursk is and have significantly sort of reinforced that area and had a lot of military success in the last few days and weeks. So as we discussed many times, Kursk is the key here. And at the moment, the Ukraine military is very much on the front foot in Kursk. And there is no sign that that's likely to change anytime soon.
North Korean army has suffered more than 3,000 casualties in the Kursk region. We have also seen some interesting videos with poor actions and poor performance of the North Korean soldiers there. How can you assess the effectiveness of the North Korean deployment and their military operation in the Kursk region, as we now have seen the main results of their operations there and high number of casualties?
Well, I think the North Korean performance and the North Korean involvement says an awful lot about Russia at the moment. First of all, I think it's virtually criminal that these soldiers who don't speak Russian, and I expect very few Russians speak North Korean, you know, they've been thrown into, you know, an area that they don't know, commanded by people who speak a language they don't speak, in a climate that they, you know, entirely unsuited to, you know, the devastating cold winter, you know, of the east of Ukraine, and Kursk is completely alien to them. And the casualty rates, as we've seen, you know, it's even higher than what the Russians are leaving. I mean, these people really are being marched to their death by their Russian masters. It is a crime. They are, in effect, mercenaries, but no doubt these poor soldiers, you know, are not being paid the sort of bounties that you would expect mercenaries to be paid. So, yeah, I think it's almost a crime against humanity to put these poor North Koreans. But what it shows even more is how desperate Putin is for soldiers. He can't generate any more Russians to go and fight, so he's having to buy, in effect, soldiers from North Korea. It says an awful lot about the North Korean dictator, Kim Jong-un, as well. So, I think this again, if one look at the positive from Ukraine's perspective, shows that the sort of Russian edifice is crumbling. And that's why the West and the US must keep the pressure on Russia, keep supporting Ukraine to make sure that Ukraine gets a peace that it really deserves, which now seems almost at touching distance.
Do you feel that Vladimir Putin expected North Koreans to change the course of this battle in the Kursk region? Do you feel that he expected them to perform more professional way?
Well, if he did, I mean, he is showing that he really is out of touch. Now, everybody knows that Putin is not a soldier. He was a spy. And it's very different being a spy to being a soldier fighting. I think anybody who'd been a soldier, and me included, would have said and did say at the start that these North Koreans will make no difference at all. They will just be complete cannon fodder. It was clear that they were poorly trained, poorly equipped, didn't understand, what the Russian masters were telling them to do. And, it was almost a foregone conclusion that they would get slaughtered in the numbers that we're seeing them there. So I think it just shows the desperation that Putin has for soldiers and the complete misunderstanding about what it is like to fight as a soldier in military operations. And actually, the whole Kursk battle is really showing that, and which is why I think we've all discussed many times that Kursk is so critically important. And Putin just seems to be reinforcing failure. And, the key principle of war is reinforced success, not failure. And he seems to be trying to bring about his own demise, which, if that is the case, I think we all applaud.